language domains, I want you to also think about how these domains can change over time. So here's just the basic summary of the 5 language domains. This is the same summary that you have available on the module. In phonology, it's how we're putting sounds together. So phonology is based on phonemes, or the variability in the production of a phone that conveys meaning. So phones are just a single speech sound, regardless if that sound is critical to the meaning of the words. So a phoneme, we learned about this again in the previous module, or 2 modules ago. A phoneme is just that isolated sound, and we can change the meaning of a word based on the phonemes in the word. So we can change cot to cat by changing the vowel phoneme, or we can change from bad to bat by changing the D to the T. What we learned previously with phonological disorders is that sometimes these children don't understand the rules, but we can also talk about how the rules of phonology change over time. So in previous movies, the South has been depicted as having a very thick and graceful Southern accent, and over time those phonological rules have changed, and that production has changed as well. So I was born in California and raised in Alabama. I don't have a very thick Southern accent, but I've learned the phonological rules of my parents, who are based in California. And over time, the South in general has also changed its production of phonemes so that the Southern accent isn't as thick or prominent as it was previously in most situations. Morphology is how we make new words, and morphemes are the smallest meaningful units in language. So let's go into what morphemes actually are. We have 2 different types of morphemes, or 2 main types. We have base morphemes that have a meaning and can stand alone, and other morphemes can be added to the beginning of the end or the end of a base morpheme. And then we have bound morphemes that have meaning but can't convey the meaning by itself, so it has to be joined with a base morpheme. So looking at this chart over here, we have our base morphemes in this column, and our base morpheme for this is do. We have a bound morpheme of un. Un can't stand alone. We can't un something, but we can undo something, and that gives us a total of 2 morphemes. For walk, walk is our base morpheme, and our bound morpheme is the past tense ed, and that gives us the word walked, and walked has a different meaning from walk, which is generally in the present tense, or walks. Memory is also a base morpheme, and we can use the bound morpheme ize to change the word to memorize. So memory, where we store something, and memorize is how we store it. That gives us 2 morphemes. We can also combine 3 morphemes. So we have the base morpheme establish, we have the morpheme that can go in the beginning, anti, and the one that can go in the end, ment, to give us anti-establishment. Next we have syntax, which is the word order or the overall structure of the sentence. When we think about who makes the rules for syntax, we have to determine, is it the linguists or the users of the language? So the people studying the language or the users? And it ultimately goes down to the users. We change our language over time and the way that we construct our sentences. So for example, in the past we used to say as if, and then we started saying bye Felicia, and now we're saying something else. And then we have dis, which is now shade, or no duh could be I mean, or take a chill pill can be I can't with you right now, or what's the dish is now spill the tea, or you go girl is yes, or da bomb is lit. Over time we're changing that syntax as the users of the language, and the linguists just document those changes. Then we have semantics, and that's what the words, phrases, or sentences mean. And again, let's go back to what influences the meaning of a word or a sentence. So if we're constructing a sentence, can we change the meaning into a question? Can we change it into a statement? Or can we change it into an instruction? And can we also change the meaning of a word by where it's placed in a sentence or what surrounds that word? And then who also influences the meaning of the word or a sentence? Is it the listener or the speaker or both? Who's ultimately interpreting the meaning of that sentence or that word? And then how does it used and conveyed in that conversation? Does it require clarification? Or do both parties agree on the meaning of the word or the sentence? And then we have pragmatics, and those are the rules that govern what we should say at different times. And there's greater emphasis on the function of the language than the structure of the language. So previously in those other 4 domains, we've looked at the structure. Now we're looking at that overall function. And again, our pragmatics have changed over time. If we're surprised or appalled, we might have a more discreet face than we do today. And so there are different ways to use pragmatics. We can have an instrumental use where we're trying to get what we want. So could I have some water as a question? Or it could be a little bit more manipulative of, would you go get me some water? Or I want some water. Or it could be regulatory where you're commanding something like pick that up. Or interactional where you're engaging others in that social interaction. So we're trying to bring people together and relating the conversation back and forth and carrying on a conversation.